Luka Doncic has built a reputation as one of the most dangerous players in the NBA, a player who thrives under pressure and delivers when it matters most. But there's one thing opposing teams still haven't learned. Never, under any circumstances, piss off Luka Doncic, because when you do, you're not just waking up a superstar, you're unleashing an unstoppable force that can single-handedly dismantle a defense and take over a game in ways very few players in history have ever been able to. Last night, the New Orleans Pelicans learned this lesson the hard way. Coming into the game, the Pelicans had been playing well, and they had a clear strategy: be physical with Luka, frustrate him, wear him down, and try to take him out of his rhythm. The game started with intense energy, and it was clear that New Orleans' defense was locked in. Jose Alvarado, known for his relentless, pesky style of play, was hounding Luka from the opening tip, bumping him, reaching in, and making it as uncomfortable as possible. Every time Luka tried to set up his offense, there was an extra hand in his face, an extra shove, an extra word whispered in his ear. The Pelicans wanted to test him, to see if they could break him down mentally before he broke them down physically. At first, it seemed like their plan was working. Luka wasn't getting the usual calls he expected, and he started slow, missing a few shots he usually makes with ease. Zion Williamson had an emphatic block on one of Luka's early floaters, sending the ball into the crowd and flexing afterward, igniting the crowd. Even Brandon Ingram got involved, sinking a jumper over Luka and giving him a stare on the way back down the court. The Pelicans were feeling confident, and their fans were loving every second of it. But anyone who has followed Luka Doncic's career knows that when he starts smirking, when he starts looking unfazed by the physicality and trash talk, that's when you know the storm is coming. The turning point came late in the second quarter. Luka drove to the basket, and Alvarado came crashing into him, sending him to the floor hard. No foul was called. Luka sat there for a second, then looked up at the referee and then at Alvarado. Instead of complaining, he smiled. That smile, that's the moment every Pelicans fan should have started worrying. Because when Luka gets that look, it means he's locked in. It means he's about to take over. When the third quarter started, it was like a completely different game. Luka came out of the locker room with a new level of intensity, and the Pelicans had no idea what was about to hit them. He started off with a deep step-back three right in Herb Jones' face. Nothing but net. The next possession, he backed down Alvarado, spun off him, and hit a fadeaway jumper off the glass. Then he came down, called for a screen, and launched another deep three over Zion. Bang! The Mavericks bench erupted. Luka turned to the Pelicans bench, nodded, and said, "Keep talking." New Orleans had no answers. The same defenders who had been barking at Luka all game suddenly looked lost. Every time they tried to double-team him, he found an open shooter. When they played him one-on-one, he either powered through contact for an easy bucket or baited them into a foul. At one point, after getting fouled on a three-pointer, he stared directly at the referee, shook his head, and sank all three free throws with a cold-blooded expression. The crowd, which had been electric in the first half, was dead silent. The Pelicans had poked the bear, and now they were paying the price. Luka's dominance continued into the fourth quarter. By now, it wasn't even a contest. It was a show. He was playing with absolute confidence, directing traffic like a maestro, hitting impossible shots and humiliating defenders. The dagger came with just under 3 minutes left. Luka isolated against Ingram, sized him up, took one dribble back, and launched a step-back three from way beyond the arc. Splash. Game over. He turned around before the ball even went in, pointing at the floor as if to say, "This is my house." By the time the final buzzer sounded, Luka had put up 47 points, 13 assists, and 9 rebounds, just one board shy of a triple-double. He had single-handedly flipped the game on its head and reminded the entire league why he is one of the most dangerous players alive. After the game, when asked about his performance, Luka just laughed and said, "They woke me up." This wasn't the first time we've seen this version of Luka Doncic. He has a history of responding to adversity with legendary performances. We saw it when the Clippers trash-talked him in the playoffs, and he dropped a 46-point masterpiece. We saw it when the Suns mocked him in Game 5 of their playoff series, only for him to torch them for 35 points in the first half of Game 7. The same thing happened against the Warriors, the Celtics, and now the Pelicans. The NBA should know by now, you do not poke the bear. You do not make Luka angry. Because when you do, you aren't just dealing with an all-star or an MVP candidate. You're dealing with a player who can single-handedly turn the game into his personal playground and make even the best defenders look helpless. So, let this be a lesson to the rest of the league. If you're facing Luka Doncic, play him tough, play him smart, but do not piss him off. Because if you do, you might just end up on the wrong side of history. Luka Doncic strikes again. Another team learns the hard way. You would think teams would learn by now. You would think, after watching Luka Doncic dismantle the New Orleans Pelicans with a 47-point masterclass, that opposing coaches would adjust their approach. Don't trash talk him. Don't rough him up. Don't poke the bear. But the very next game, the Oklahoma City Thunder made the same mistake. From the opening tip, it was clear OKC had a plan. They had watched the Pelicans' strategy, and despite how badly it had backfired, they thought they could execute it better. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander set the tone early, getting in Luka's face after a contested layup, letting him know the Thunder weren't backing down. Rookie sensation Chet Holmgren, despite his slender frame, threw his body into Luka on drives, making sure every possession was a battle. Even Lou Dort, one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA, whispered something in Luka's ear after forcing a rare turnover. For the first quarter, it seemed like it was working. Luka was visibly frustrated, missing some uncharacteristic shots, throwing his arms up at the refs when he didn't get calls. The Thunder bench was hyped. The crowd fed off the energy. It felt like maybe, just maybe, OKC had found the blueprint. They hadn't. Because just like against the Pelicans, there was a moment. A single defining moment when everything shifted. Midway through the second quarter, with the Mavericks trailing by 7, Luka drove into the lane and was met by Holmgren, who swatted his shot away. The Thunder bench exploded. Holmgren flexed. The crowd roared. Shai gave Luka a smirk and a slight nod, as if to say, "Is that all you got?" Luka just stood there for a second, hands on his hips, staring at the floor. Then he did it. That same smile. That same terrifying, knowing smile that every Mavericks fan recognizes. That every opposing player should fear. And from that point on, Luka Doncic took over. The next possession, he casually walked up the court, called for a screen, and drained a step-back three over Holmgren. The possession after that, he backed down Dort, spun baseline, and hit a one-legged fadeaway that barely touched the net. Then, after stealing an inbound pass, he pulled up from 30 feet, before the defense could even react. Bang! The Mavericks were suddenly up by 5. Luka was in full control now. The Thunder were scrambling, switching defenders, trying everything to slow him down. It didn't matter. He danced through double teams, found open team teammates with pinpoint no-look passes, and absorbed contact like it was nothing. At one point, after sinking a tough-and-one layup, he turned to the Thunder bench and said, "Try harder." By the fourth quarter, it was over. Luka had sucked the life out of the building. The same fans who had been screaming in the first half were now dead silent, watching in disbelief. He had turned another game into his own personal highlight reel. Final stat line, 54 points, 11 assists, 8 rebounds. Another night, another masterclass, another team that made the mistake of waking him up. After the game, when asked about OKC's physical play, Luka grinned and shrugged. "They tried," he said, "but they should have known better." The message is clear. NBA teams can double him, they can get physical, they can try to push his buttons. But if they do, they better be ready for what's coming. Because when Luka Doncic gets pissed off, he doesn't just beat you, he embarrasses you. And the league still hasn't figured out how to stop it.